Five Nights at Freddy's is just released in theaters and it's already making bank. Video game movies are having this crazy renaissance right now, but I want to get even more niche in today's video. I want to talk about the 3 big contenders when it comes to animatronic horror, and talking about which one is the best out of the 3. The Banana Splits movie, Willy's Wonderland, and Five Nights at Freddy's. Let's weigh some pros and cons for all 3 of these movies right now.
Well, sometimes that is better.
9 years ago, the original Five Nights at Freddy's game came out, and it was a huge success. It was not a year later that a movie adaptation was in the works, but unfortunately we didn't end up getting the film until literally this year. Just a couple of days ago from when I'm posting this. I covered the absolutely insane behind-the-scenes stuff regarding the Five Nights at Freddy's movie and why we didn't end up seeing the film until now in this video up here. But to sum that up real quickly, essentially many studios had their hands on a Five Nights at Freddy's script at one point, including Warner Bros. They didn't end up doing Five Nights at Freddy's, of course, but they did end up getting their hands on the rights to the Banana Splits, which is how the Banana Splits movie happened in 2019. Based on an actual children's property, which was live action mixed with cartoons, the Banana Splits movie is a horror rendition of the former children's program. Just like how the Five Nights at Freddy's video game captures the eeriness of the old school Chuck E. Cheese robots, they kinda did that with the Banana Splits movie, but take the old children's program and, well, make it horror. Being the first imitator of Five Nights at Freddy's, the Banana Splits movie is actually a lot of fun. I think out of the 3 movies we're going to be talking about today, this easily has the best human kills, and yes, we're gonna differentiate human kills and animatronic kills because Willy's Wonderland exists. But I don't even think there's an argument to say that the Banana Splits movie has the best kills out of these 3. It has the best gore and blood and deaths. Some of them might get a little goofy at times. I mean, the one guy gets like a sucker down his throat, but it's still a lot of fun. I love me some gore, what can I say? I also think the simple slasher format that this movie has gives it a really good pace. It's simple, but effective. Sometimes it doesn't have to be any more complex like that, especially when you're making an R-rated children's property. Kids are going to and have watched this movie despite how disgusting it is. I think this movie might have the best characters out of all 3 of these movies, but that's also not saying much. All 3 of these have, well, just to put it bluntly, shit characters. Except for the janitor, but we'll get to that. The biggest drawback to this film, though, is some of the characters, which I know kind of counters my last point, but they're still not great characters. I mean, 2 of them are like Instagram influencers. I also think the animatronics here are the weakest out of all 3 of these movies. The costumes just look like costumes. All of the moves in the costumes too are really fluid instead of like janky and robotic like they should be. The design, performances, and especially the dumb Child's Play 2019 motive in this movie is easily the worst part of the flick. Why is it that nearly every time we have a gateway child's horror film that deals with robotic animals of some sort, you have to have a crazy kill switch in the programming? That does not exist. You can't just press a button in the back of Elmo's head and then he starts murdering children. I just can't suspend my disbelief there. I find that to be really lazy writing. But I enjoy the Banana Splits movie. I give it like a 5 out of 10. It's solid. The kills are pretty exceptional, but the story is one you've probably seen a million times in other slasher flicks. Now flash forward 2 years, skipping over the worst year ever to 2021, where Willy's Wonderland came out from G.O. Parsons. It might be the most egregious Five Nights at Freddy's ripoff, but it kind of renders a reason to exist. Personally, I feel like this film has the best motive for why the animatronics are killing people, even over the Five Nights at Freddy's video games. Is it creepy that they stuffed children into these animatronics in Five Nights at Freddy's? Yes, but we don't even really get to see it, especially not in the movie. Maybe this breaks the PG-13 rating, but I would have liked to have seen some child bones fall out of Freddy Fazbear's ankles or something. I don't know. It would have been a lot more disturbing than anything else that happened in that film. But in Willy's Wonderland, I feel like the motive makes our animatronic killers a lot scarier this time around. A bunch of serial killers performed a satanic ritual to possess these animalistic robots. I mean, does it get better than that? I don't think so. I mean, it's a little child's play, but I still enjoy it. The reason I like this conception a little better than what happens in Five Nights at Freddy's is because it's simply scarier. I want to be terrified by Freddy Fazbear. You also have the townsfolk feeding these animatronics strangers from out of town so they don't go after them. I like that onion because it's got layers. It also has the best character out of all 3 of these movies, hands down. It's a really ambitious decision to have Nick Cage in your lead role and then not have him say a word. This is the guy who is known for his outlandish dialogue performances, and to just not have him say anything is really bold, and I appreciate this movie for it. I also really like the structure of this movie being very video game-esque. Like, you have Nick Cage fighting an animatronic, then he kind of goes to the break room. Almost like you're playing a Resident Evil game where you go and find like a save room real quick. You know, when you get too terrified of the zombies and you just have to take a breather. At least I do that. I don't know if you do that. But I'm also not saying Willy's Wonderland is a masterpiece. It's a 6 out of 10 at best. You thought the side characters in the Banana Splits movie were annoying. Oh my god, these teenagers can all go fuck off. I love that it's a little campy at times, like the guy with the meat stick in his mouth is hilarious, Tex is great, the sheriff is pretty good too. But all of those teenage characters don't even need to be in this movie and don't even really get that great of kills. And I also have a very hot take with this movie that I'm sure most people won't agree with, but I feel like the Willy's Wonderland animatronics are my absolute favorite out of these 3 movies. Bear with me here. The Jim Henson's Creature Shop did an excellent job at recreating the animatronics from the video game. Like, that's a 10 out of 10. In design, Five Nights at Freddy's wins this category all day, but in terms of performances, I strongly prefer Willy's Wonderland. It's 2 things in particular. I don't ever find the animatronics in the Five Nights at Freddy's movie to be scary. They're acting like children for the majority of the time that they're on screen. The titular Freddy Fazbear hardly gets any kills in the movie either, besides the coolest one in the whole film. I will give him that. But the cupcake is easily the most brutal in all of Five Nights at Freddy's, and honestly, fuck that thing. All of the Willy's Wonderland animatronics are really scary at one point in the film, at least in my opinion. I also love the style choice of having them bleed black motor oil blood. For me personally, Willy's Wonderland is my absolute favorite on this list. I mean, it's not a perfect movie by any means, but Nicolas Cage fighting animalistic robots for like 90-ish minutes, that wins all day for me. And you can't forget that he basically has sex with a pinball machine too. I mean, come on. But now let's flash forward another 2 years to the present. Five Nights at Freddy's. A movie that some people have been waiting for 8 years now came out to some pretty low reviews. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film currently holds a 27% from critics, but an 88% from audience members. I would also like to note that the majority of the people who saw this movie were under the age of 35. Take that however you want to take it. Like I was saying earlier, in terms of design, the animatronics here absolutely take the cake, blowing the other 2 movies out of the water. Jim Henson's Creature Shop will always be king when it comes to puppeting and costumes. There's no argument there. Come on. But in terms of performances, I don't really care for any of the animatronics in all of Five Nights at Freddy's. I think all of them are subpar at best. This film also borrows from Willy's Wonderland, which, let's just pause and think about that for a minute. I think that's really embarrassing. Some guy named Geo Parsons was able to make an animatronic horror film before the actual animatronic horror franchise was able to do that, and in my opinion, blows it out of the water. And on top of that, the Five Nights at Freddy's movie basically takes the whole idea of having a big group of people all come into the restaurant at the same time and all get killed. And that's where the majority of the human kills come from in both movies. They're imitating the imitator. Once again, take that how you will, but for me, that's just embarrassing. The other thing that's weird about it too is it's like one of the biggest things that was criticized about Willy's Wonderland, and this movie makes the same exact mistake. Why? What were they thinking? You would think the people that wrote this film would watch Willy's Wonderland and be like, hey, let's not do all those things that people hated about that movie and make ours better, but no. All of the kills are done off screen except for easily the best kill in the movie, which is the babysitter getting bitten in half by Freddy Fazbear. That was pretty sick. I will give them that, but I think Five Nights at Freddy's easily has the worst kills out of the entire group. The rest of them are done pretty much on screen. There's hardly any blood or gore in this movie, which once again, I get it's PG-13, but give me something. It's a horror film. Why are we building a fort? Like, yes, I get that these are ghost children, but they're being manipulated by a sociopath. Have them do something evil. When I went to Chuck E. Cheese as a kid, I wasn't thinking to myself, oh boy, I want to build a fort with these guys. I was thinking about where I'm going to get a change of pants because I just pissed myself. I was so scared. I get that there's a lot of fun references to the games and Five Nights at Freddy's fans are digging this, but as a standalone movie, it just blows. A film filled with Easter eggs is not anything special. It's just an Easter egg hunt. And maybe that's what you're into, but for me personally, I need something more than that. The human story at the core of this thing, which is the majority of the movie, is undercooked at best. The whole Josh Hutcherson trying to connect with his sister thing doesn't work for me. I also hate the majority of the side characters in this movie, just like the other 2 films we talked about. There's not a whole lot improvement from what came in the past here. With Five Nights at Freddy's being so successful, I just see it as a shame because these other 2 movies that came before it are just way better. This is a 3 out of 10 at best for me. A lot of people are calling it great gateway horror, and like, yeah, it is. Like, kids will probably love this movie, but in terms of just a PG-13 horror film, it fails. I really wanted a movie where the majority of it was Josh Hutcherson trying to run away from these animatronics and survive all 5 nights because he needs the money and has an emotional connection to the place, which this movie does set up really well, I will say that. But hardly any of the movie is that. The rest of it is just the dramatic side of it, and I don't care. All of the fun and scary aspects to the video games that are integral to staying alive for all 5 nights are pushed to the side to focus on anything else, which I think is just such a missed opportunity here. I just don't feel like this is a good adaptation of the Five Nights at Freddy's video game. So for me personally, I'm putting both of the imitators over like the actual thing. But obviously the box office would strongly disagree with me. So how do you guys feel about the Five Nights at Freddy's movie and all other animatronic horror? I really just talked about the 3 big ones, but I'm sure there's others out there. Leave me your favorite from this very weird subgenre in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching this video on animatronic horror. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more horror content in the future. Please consider supporting me on Patreon by clicking on the link in the description of this video, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.